And you know, there's a liberating factor, and I want us to kind of go through some of these other things. But there's a liberating factor about investments, in my opinion, when you have that security. In other words, you don't have this, like you were talking about, this need. Where's this wild horse come from that you were talking about? I don't have this need to have a lot of things. Now, if God blesses me with it, that's great. But I don't have to have that. In other words, what I've got is Him, and I'm secure in Him, and then all that He gives me, that's not my attachment. My attachment is to Him. So.
See, and that's that whole thing that it goes back to our first time together, our first session on this. That timeless principle, the principle that will result in a measure of financial security, the law that results, and it's just simply this: if you spend less than you earn, then you will end up in a secure place financially. And that's where that debt thing comes in. That if debt, but we've got to have something. We need this, we need that, and so we go into debt in order to get it. You're spending more than you have, and so then you don't have anything to invest. So this earthly investment thing presupposes that you are keeping more than you're spending. You're holding, you're able to preserve more than you're giving out. Then you got something to give away. But if you're, and that's why in America this credit card craziness that, I mean, even college kids are getting 4 and 5 credit cards and running up $20,000 bills on each one, and they're just drowning. This nation is drowning in debt. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't mean that that's going to guarantee any kind of security. It just creates insecurity.
Okay, let's talk about this a little bit. Tell me the difference in what's okay with building a portfolio for retirement and credit card debt. You've got a notice here on your thing I want to ask you about. Maybe we'll get to that later. But co-signing. Which are some issues that we face. So, I know a lot of people, and pastors especially, used to not be, there was no retirement for them, and a lot of them suffered as a result of that. So how much is it okay or to do as far as providing for your future through putting back aside money for retirement? And then when you talk about credit card, what is the difference in that and credit card indebtedness and so forth?
Obviously anything that is being set aside for retirement is actual money. That's what you have. The credit card business, where there is a debt being accumulated, that's money you don't have. And as the Lord does bless, and there are principles throughout the Scripture, Joseph being one of them, that the Lord gave him wisdom as to how to set aside so that Egypt would be taken care of, the people of God in Egypt being taken care of during a time of famine. I don't believe that the Lord teaches that in every situation, in every life, it's just supposed to be a dependency upon Him for the provision for each day, that He does bring up things in store. He does make provision for that for times when we're not able physically to work. I think that there's sound, that's wisdom, that's sound, and then we spent some time trying to talk about how much is enough. You guys you've reached decisions about how big a house do we feel like we have to have? How many cars do we feel like we have to have? And it's not that we've got all these options, that we could have multiples of all of those, but you do come to a place, putting your life before the Lord, putting what He brings your way back before Him, and He brings you into a place, we don't need any more than this. This is, God, as you bless us with this, then we're able to even reach the place of giving more than we receive. I mean, that you live off a certain amount, and then what a joyful kingdom place it could be to just realize, we're living on 10% and we're being able to give away 90%. I grew up under the influence of it when I was a child. A man named R.G. Letourneau had a 6th grade education, and that was his principle, that he's going to live on 10% and give God 90%. And he built his company, built a university, but his whole that legacy, traveled the country. My dad traveled with him as his chaplain and flew all over the country speak. And he would just 6th grade education, a genius in mechanical engineering. He didn't even know what that was, but he could just design all this stuff. And he lived off 10%, gave God 90%. And what a blessing, that kind of thing could be as the Lord would lead us.
Okay, now, in order to be able to put aside some money, one of the reasons, of course, we talked about this in the very first, somewhat, about credit card debts and going into debt. Never, I think one of your principles is never use debt to make investments. Go in debt to make an investment. Yeah. Would that be a right way to say it?
The danger of borrowing money that really does not exist to you in order to be a part of something over here. Now, that's different than taking $5,000 out of your savings and putting in, in an account or in an investment in another place. I think and I am no financial counselor. This is just kind of a compilation of the wisdom of others who are, and I've listed here that the collective conclusion of numerous Christian financial advisors is this: never cosign. Never cosign. Proverbs 11:15, he who puts up security for another will surely suffer, but whoever refuses to strike hands in pledge is safe. Proverbs 17:18, it is poor judgment to cosign a friend's note, let alone an acquaintance's or an enemy's note. Poor judgment to cosign a friend's note, to become responsible for a neighbor's debts. And again, we're just talking about biblical principles for biblical investment. As a pastor, Sammy, I have, over the years, to my great dismay and sadness, I have watched dear friends, dear Christian friends, end up being at such odds that they don't speak, that they both leave the church. They end up, families just over this issue of going. Maybe they say they're going to go into business together, but they're going to co-sign. They're going to support each other's. What I've come to on that is that if somebody wants you, or they're asking you for help, or they're saying, just loan me some money, I'll pay it back, you better look at it as a gift.
Yeah.
Rather than a cold, hard business dealing, because it ends. And the Scripture, it's amazing to me that the Scripture just says, don't do that. Don't. It's more blessed to give than to receive. So stay there, but don't co-sign on something. Isn't that interesting?
What about children?
I was thinking about that because we're all at the age where our kids are in. And I mean, we have not had this specifically completely come up at this point, but we feel like their finances need to be separate from ours. And fleshly mercy can say, this is my child and I have this money and I could help them out. But
what about establishing credit?
What do y'all do? What do you do with Renee or with Dave?
Well, we don't do anything with them. They're
well,
once they said I do.
We're talking about before marriage,
But before marriage, I think with I don't know. I don't remember doing anything with Dave, but with Renee, we did co-sign on buying a car. And that's why I wanted to ask you about this. Now I did approach it the way you said. I went into it. In order to have credit for her to buy a car, she was driving an old car and it was dangerous, and she needed something. And I went in. She didn't buy a new car. She bought a low mileage used car. And for her to get credit, because she's just out of college, I co-signed with her. Now I looked at it. I didn't tell her this, but I looked at it as
your debt.
That's my debt, not hers. Right. And I'm going to pay this thing off if she doesn't. And she had a job. She was paying notes, and she paid it, and she built up.
Kind of hard to convince Tex that we need to sue Renee.
and actually, she ended up paying it off early, and so
but that's the point. I think it's the underlying. Technically, it may be a cosign. It may but in your heart, it's your debt. Right. In your heart, it's a gift.